Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today to learn more about how you can rock your next presentation and demo. Yeah! We're super excited to talk to you about ways that you can make an amazing Salesforce presentation. Just to introduce ourselves, my name is Leanne Reimel. I am your trusty principal admin evangelist here at Salesforce, and you can find me on the Twitters at Leandroid.
Hi everyone, I am Rebecca Saar. I am Director of Admin Marketing, and fun fact, I run the Admin Webinar Program, so this topic is near and dear to me. You can find me on Twitter at Rebecca Saar.
We also often refer to Rebecca as our local rock star. So if you see that term floating around, that refers to our Rebecca Star because she just builds awesome presentations, and I know has helped me quite a bit with my presentation building because we do a lot for our keynotes and our webinars and our sessions. So really excited to bring that to you today. Want to start off with our forward-looking statement. We ask that you make all purchasing decisions based on currently available technologies and not anything we may mention about future technologies. We love connecting with our audience, so please, and with our admin community, so please connect with us on Twitter at Salesforce Admins. Remember, there's no I in admins. And with hashtag AwesomeAdmin, as well as on all of these social channels as well, like Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So let's start off with the content. Let's talk about what we're here to talk about.
Let's get into it.
Many of you may be preparing for presentations at events like Dreamforce or Trailhead DX, presentations at your local community events or user group meetups, and presentations for job interviews or for internal stakeholder engagement and stakeholder meetings. So whether or not it's a presentation that's more of a public presentation where you're presenting to people outside your company, or a presentation for a potential job opportunity, or a presentation to get buy-in, there's some really key elements that are incredibly important to build into your presentation to make sure that your knowledge and your hard work is really translated through that presentation, right? That you don't kind of lose any of that in translation as you're sharing maybe something you built or some of your technical expertise with your audience. So we've got this broken down into three main chapters, three main areas. The first is selecting the right framework, and Rebecca's going to talk about this. How do you make sure that you're picking the right format for the presentation and really being thoughtful and knowledgeable about how you're building that presentation right from the get-go? Then Rebecca's going to share some of her tips for building really effective slides. This is so important. I never used to build slides in my career at all. I always did technical demos, technical presentations, and Rebecca really taught me a lot about how to build impactful slides and make sure that the slides I'm building weren't taking away from my message at all, and they were only adding to my message and not causing distractions. And then I'm going to share with you some tips on how to build a really focused demo. This is important whether you're demoing internally, maybe for user adoption or for stakeholder engagement. It's going to also be important for any of your technical sessions to make sure that you're building a really focused and targeted demo so that you're sharing your technical expertise. So, Rebecca, let's get started with talking about the right framework.
Thank you so much, Leanne. All right, let's get into this. Okay, so we're beginning at the beginning with the right framework because this is going to set you up for success. Once you know this part, you can easily build those slides, build your demo, but we start here to make sure that all of your content is just the right content for your audience. And there's three main parts to kind of building that framework out. So number one, know your audience. So I'm sure you've heard this before, right? But you always want to kind of talk to your audience and always tailor your content to them. So whether if you're talking to an end user versus an admin versus an executive, you're gonna be telling them different things depending on who they are, right? So making sure you understand who they are, what drives them, what is important to them is 100% important. And we do that here, right? Because all of our webinars are for admins. So we make sure we speak in language that our admins understand and with information and insights that are important to them. And next, we want to frame our presentation. So this is all about understanding, what that level is that our audience is at and starting our conversation there. So admins are going to be more technical. So maybe we don't need to spend a whole lot of time explaining what Salesforce is to them, right? So it's kind of that having that context, right? And knowing that depending on the audience, you do need to have explainers. You want to remove jargon where you can, things like that. Lastly, find your focus. So this is the thing that'll give you 100% success in your presentation, is if you can decide on that one thing that you want your audience to take away and frame your whole presentation around that. This means you'll have a very focused presentation, right? And your audience will kind of remember what that key message is and do what we are asking them to do at the end of the presentation.
So Rebecca, for today's presentation, what is our focus as an example?
Our focus is
rock your preso.
Rock your preso.
Right.
So everything we're talking about is going to help you along your journey to rocking your preso. And this is especially relevant for any of you presenting at Dreamforce or a community event very soon. Take these learnings and apply them for your next presentation. All right, so once we've kind of figured out our focus and our audience, we can break down the presentation, and we want to include key story attributes. So every presentation is really a story, right, that you're telling, and we like to tell stories because they're easy to remember. And so the way to break down a story is by all the different attributes that you want to include. And these are kind of your high-level attributes. So we really break down and simplify how to build your presentation here. We want a strong title. We want a key thesis. Our key thesis is you're going to rock your presentation if you know the three things we're going to cover, right? Which is your framework, your slides, and your demo. And then we'll have main characters. We want a logical flow of ideas and memorable supporting details that all culminate in a conclusion that is usually a call to action, like what do we want people to do with all this information that we're giving them. Now, these are your key story attributes, and I just wanted to kind of show you what that looks like when we do it at Salesforce. So this is a sneak peek into kind of how we build our decks here at Salesforce, and this is one of our keynotes from the past, and you can see we've got our title, we have our thesis about the fourth industrial revolution, we have our main characters, our trailblazers, we have this logical flow of ideas that we're explaining, and we have supporting details and facts and numbers. All right, so we just kind of went over all those key pieces you would want to put in your presentation to really tell an amazing story. But there are many different ways that you can kind of put it all together. And there are many, but we will just cover a couple of them that I think will be helpful for you in terms of the type of presentations you may be giving very soon. One that is very common is the pain solution framework. So with the pain solution framework, this is what you usually use to pitch a new idea or pitch a product. And let me just kind of go through this with you. So this is an internal example that we use actually. We start with a situation, which here is, there's so much data being created. 90% of the world's data has been created in the last 12 months. What is our complication? Well, only 1% of that data has been analyzed. So what can we do to solve that? Well, the answer is Einstein Analytics and analytics for everyone. And then we share some proof points about why it really is the answer and it's so amazing. And we have a call to action at the end. Take the Trailhead Trail to learn more about Einstein Analytics. So this is kind of your story arc for a pain solution framework presentation. Another very common framework that we use, this is very common for webinars, is the outline framework, because this is a great way to kind of explain complex technical topics and things of that nature, where you really just are trying to go through very clearly an agenda of topics or a logical flow of steps. So you'll recognize this going forward from future webinars and videos. All right, so that was a quick overview of how to build that right framework and kind of set yourself up for success when you're building your presentation. Now we can go into building slides, the fun stuff, if you ask me. All right, so start with considering the medium and setting. So this is very dear to my heart because there are big differences in terms of where you're presenting, if you're online versus in person. So I just put some questions down here with answers to kind of get you thinking. So if you're presenting on someone else's computer, are you making sure that they have the programs that you're using to build your slides? Or can you build your slides in a Google or Quip where you can just log in, right? How can you make it super seamless for yourself? Are you presenting on a really large screen with a lot of visuals? I definitely recommend Keynote. It's a great product for those kind of large scale events. But if you're presenting in a webinar, there's different things to consider. One, you don't want to have flashy visuals and you kind of want to reduce your animation. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but it's a very different setting, and on a webinar, you really want to provide as much information as possible in a seamless way, and that's how you can kind of keep your audience moving along. And then, are you presenting internally and need to collaborate? Is this a living presentation versus one that you give once and leave? Then also think about Google Slides or Quip Slides, because those are always great for collaboration and for keeping up to date. So next, once you've figured out what platform you're going to use and where, and you now know your framework, right? Like, what is the story you want to tell? Start sketching that out by translating your story into the slide titles. So effective presentations tell the story just through the slide titles, and that's something we do internally at Salesforce as well. The example right here is from the admin keynote from last year, and so as you can read through this, you can kind of follow the story along, right? We set out to make CRM easy. Then a new tech hero was born. It was the Salesforce admin, and they were the original Trailblazers, and they drive the Trailblazer economy. So without even having the information on the slide, we can see where the story is going. And this is a great way for you to build out, to go to the next step from having your framework to starting to look at your slides. And once you've done that, you can really start to think about what you're going to put on your slides, right? And don't skip the step of blue boxing. Blue boxing is a very effective way of designing your slides, because you can think about what you want on your slide before trying to make it 100% perfect, design it, and then get frustrated because it doesn't look like what you want it to, right? We do this again here at Salesforce, where we think about what we want the slide to portray, what the main message is, the imagery we want, and we just very crudely put blue boxes with words that say, we want a wall in between customers and a call center. And we'll do that for the whole deck, so we have that great understanding of what our content looks like. And then we come back and we design it and make it visually pleasing. Pro tip right there. And now here for some fun bits. So this is what I love to do. I get decks and I help add polish and get them to that next level. And a lot of it is all in the little details. And so 3 buckets I kind of put that in is text, images, and alignment. For text, just go through your deck and make sure you have the same font, unless it's truly you're wanting to, highlight something with a different font. Also, make sure your sizing is standardized. You want all your titles to be the same size. You want all kind of the text within the slides to be the same. And the same goes with color. Sometimes it's just a little bit of a different color, but even that can be distracting. Images, there's a lot of tools in your toolbox, essentially, that help you kind of crop and kind of adjust images to fit on your slides best. And then alignment, another really great tool that will clean up your deck like 50%. Essentially with alignment, you can decide to align across your screen if you have different text boxes or pictures, or you could align them all in the center. And you can also text align within your images and lots of different ways. I would just encourage you to explore alignment and use that whenever you can, especially if you have different pieces on your slide. And lastly, use Paintbrush. That's a great, easy way to make sure you are uniform on all your different slides. All right, so this is the fun part. We are now going to do a little demo of fixing a slide. So this is a slide about Sunshine Chocolates and their operations. And if I'm a viewer of this slide, I can see, okay, looks like there's a lot of great data. I'm reading that they had an interesting year. There's a lot to celebrate about. There's confetti on the slide. But there's a lot going on, and I'm not 100% sure, what am I celebrating? Why is this good? So let's go in and fix the slide. So I'm going to just make a copy of it. And now let's decide first what we want the point of the slide to be. So I'm seeing that, we've had kind of this growth in sales. And I think that's pretty exciting. And I think that's something we should call out and really make the focus of the slide. So the first thing we can do is just update the title to be saying that. So let's say Sunshine Chocolates increases sales in FY20. Like, that's a lot more stronger of a statement, right? And I think that would have any exec perk up. All right, so if this is the point of our slide to represent how we've increased sales, I love having all these graphics, but I think we could just have one and it would be just as effective. So I'm actually going to delete this one that doesn't really help us make our point. And I'm going to make this one bigger. Now, there's all this text right here that is sort of interesting, but also not that helpful. It's something you could probably put in your talk track and talk to words, and it'll be more effective. So I'm going to delete it. Same goes with this beautiful picture of confetti. Let's add excitement in our talk track to show how we are excited about the increase in sales. All right, so I've cleaned up the slide a lot more. And now we have here are some key data points, and I do want to call those out because they help summarize what's on our graph. And to kind of group everything to make it easy to read, I'm going to say FY20 key data trends, and then we can see that 20% growth in candy sales, and that jelly beans sales have increased the most. That's great. And then we have this kind of negative statement about gummy bears. I think we could change the sentiment and just say FY21 focus. And then we can say, increase gummy bear sales. And then, we're still calling it out as a thing that we need to do, but we're not being as negative. Now for the kind of design things, we have all these amazing template slides that are just so much more exciting than the one we're using. So let's just pick one and, leverage what our company designers have made for us. So here we go. Now we have it on a new template, and then we can highlight our two pieces. We can go to arrange, align, align to the top. And then now we know that both of these pieces are aligned. And then I usually don't use black. I use a color that's close to black, but it's less stark. Ooh. And there we go. Now we have a slide that's a lot easier to read and makes a big statement. So just to summarize, when you're doing your presentation and you're working on that last step of like cleaning up all your slides, remember to fix your titles, evaluate subtitles if you need them or if you can incorporate that within the rest of what you're presenting on the slide. Unify your text treatment, align your shapes, and resize and crop any photos. All right, I'm gonna pass it off to Leanne now.
Awesome. I still love watching Rebecca do her live slide editing. I've seen her do that to my slides in person, in real time. But those are just awesome tips because think about those times where you've been in the audience and watching presentations or engaging with presentations. It's really distracting if there's things that aren't kind of cohesive and calm and organized on the screen, and it takes away from the content of the presentation. So Rebecca's covered with us how to think about and create the right framework, how to build really effective slides that are supporting your presentation and not taking away from your presentation. And now we're going to talk about how to build a focused demo. So many of us are doing likely some measure of technical presentations, and a technical presentation could be anything from a presentation to encourage user adoption. It could be a presentation to cover some particular release features, and it might be a presentation where you're sharing maybe something that you built or something that you want to build as part of a Salesforce project for stakeholders. Or this is very common as well for job interviews in the Salesforce ecosystem. So it's a really good skill set to practice and work on. And these are things I've learned over the last 10 years of doing technical presentations here at Salesforce for our customers, for our executives, for you, our awesome admins, and just kind of gathering all of that feedback together in one place. So the first and most important thing about building a demo, for any demo you're building, whether it's for any of those kind of different audiences that we talked about, is to have a formula, to follow the demo formula. And this is something that I've put together based on tons of insight and feedback and lessons learned with customers and customer presentations. And it's a really effective way to kind of audit your demo and to help you build your demo. And the formula is really simple. Business need plus feature plus impact. So everything that you're showing in your demo should kind of fall into this formula. So as an example, let's talk about sales user adoption. Let's imagine that I'm doing a demo internally for sales users to help drive their adoption and their understanding of the Salesforce implementation that we have. So that's my business need, sales user adoption. That's why we're doing this demo. That's that focused, when Rebecca talked about having that kind of focused goal of the presentation, that's our goal. That's our business need. But then I want to find the features that tie to that because it is a technical demo. So features for this example would be maybe mobile, opportunity workspace, particular sales analytics. Features can be Salesforce features, like core features like I have listed here, but they can also be, a custom flow that you built or something, in particular that you built. So it doesn't have to be a list of Salesforce features, but just what is that technical thing that you're showing? And what is the impact of them using that thing? So we've got to start from what does your audience need? What is the part of the technology that's going to help them get there? And what does it look like once they get there? Now, you can have this formula multiple times in your demo, right? So often, if I'm building, say, a keynote demo, this formula may exist 5 times within one demo. There might be 5 different kind of business needs that we're showing in these different sub-stories or vignettes in the demo. However, you should never have anything in your demo that doesn't fit within this formula. Because if you're showing something, if you're showing a screen in your demo and you can't articulate what is the audience's business need and what's the impact to them for this feature, then you probably shouldn't be showing it because it's probably not that interesting to them. And it's not something that is like targeted for them as an audience. So I'm going to talk about some of those high level pieces, and then I'm going to show you an example of a good demo and a bad demo, a tale of 2 demos, if you will. First, let's talk about how you deliver your demo. So you've created your demo with that formula. In our resources that we've shared, that we'll share at the end, we've got some great demo scripts and ways to actually list out what is the feature, the talk track, and the click path for different parts of your demo. But actually delivering your demo smoothly goes a huge ways to helping it land and have an impact. And so the first piece is to set expectations. So when you're beginning a demo, a technical demo, let the audience know what you want to show them, right? Let them know with slides, let them know as you're leading up to that demo so that they kind of know what to expect. It can help your demo stay within scope and not cause the questions to kind of start going all over the place, and help them, learn, oh, here's what I'm supposed to be getting out of this demo. So for example, with a sales user demo, it might be, I'm going to show you a demo of how you can use Opportunity Workspace to close your deals faster, right? Like just kind of setting that stage can go a really long way. Confirm understanding. So depending on how big the room is and like who you're talking to for your demo or your presentation, engage with your audience throughout the course of the demo. You don't want to just be blazing through a demo and then people, didn't understand something on the second screen. So it might be getting verbal confirmation, asking them, does anyone have any questions about this screen? Sometimes you don't want to interrupt the flow of your demo. So it might just be kind of making eye contact with people in the room and making sure that everyone looks, like they kind of are following you and where you're going with it. But really thinking about yourself as the tour guide for that demo. So versus just, again, like I said, blazing through different screens, thinking about how can you orient them to what's on the screen. I'm going to show you an example of that in a moment, but how can you really use your voice to orient them to everything that's going on the screen and where they should be looking? Because there's a lot going on most Salesforce screens, so it's really important that you are guiding them. Okay, as a sales user, this homepage is where you will start your day every day. The navigation bar is how you get to different elements of Salesforce. Things like that help them understand how to view the screen. When you're executing on your demo and actually delivering it, slow down. I struggle with this myself. I'm always reminding myself to slow down, but it's especially important when you're delivering a technical demo and clicking around screens. You need to go like half as fast as you would naturally. Because imagine, again, when you've been in the audience for a demo or any sort of big presentation, if you look away from the screen for a second, all of a sudden you don't know, why are we on this page? What happened, right? So going a lot slower than feels natural is good for clicking through a technical demo. And give your audience time to pause and reflect. So when you get to a screen, stop there, take your hand off the mouse, and let them digest what's going on and maybe use your voice to be the tour guide for that screen. I mentioned taking your hand off the mouse. Do not over mouse. Mousing is one of the most annoying things that happens in whether it's webinars or sessions or demos, and it's very distracting to your audience. So try to touch the mouse as little as possible. Think about clear mouse paths, like I'm going to go from this button to this button, and then take your hand off the mouse, because it's incredibly tempting for all of us to circle things with the mouse. Don't do that. It's very distracting for your audience and it doesn't help gather understanding. Also, expecting the unexpected. Unexpected things happen in presentations. It's just the nature of it. They always will. The more that you prepare for them, the less that they will happen. It's like the rules that way. And so as you prepare, depending on how much gravity that presentation has, that will inform how much you prepare. So if it is like a one-shot chance to do this presentation, you're never going to get to do it again, like it is your only chance to present to this audience, I would definitely consider doing a screencast using like your local recording tool, so you can have that screencast as an option. Also having backup orgs is sometimes an option. If it's like a less serious, like maybe you could redo it, presentation, like maybe an internal presentation, sometimes just screenshots are okay too. So depending on what you're planning to show, either a screencast or having a PowerPoint that just has all the different screens. So you could just click through that as well. But having some sort of backup, I feel like whenever I have backups for a demo, it decreases the likelihood that something's going to fall over and break during it. And if little minor things go wrong in your demo, you don't have to tell anybody. I kind of joke about, if someone gets on stage and they have mustard on their shirt, for a lot of presenters, there's some people who will get on stage and say, oh, everyone look, I've got mustard on my shirt. And then that's all you see for the rest of the presentation. I've seen other speakers that will get on stage, and if they have something like that happen, they just talk through it and I don't even know about it till later. So I think that evaluating, is this kind of a minor thing that broke? Like maybe I have 3 actions on my process and only 2 actions fired, but the really 2 important ones fired. The third one didn't work for this example, but if it's not really core to your story, sometimes you can just talk through it and move past it, and no one will notice, and it won't take away from what you're trying to teach them. So I'm going to show you a really quick example, kind of a tale of 2 demos, if you will. So let's take a look at maybe a less well-honed demo. I've got my window here. I'm not even logged in yet. It doesn't look like. I've got my grumpy cat screensaver thing here. My window is not the right size. I've got all my stuff on my backdrop here on my desktop. But I guess I'm going to go ahead and log in. So when I log in, let's imagine I'm just giving you a demo. I'm showing you Salesforce. Here's Salesforce. Here's setup. Now I'm going to go to home. This is home. Now I'm on the home page. On the home page, there would be stuff here if I had stuff there. Same with here. We can open an opportunity. If we had activities, they'd be here. But you can't even really see everything. So here's the opportunity screen. And there we go. Rebecca always laughs at me when I do my bad demo. It's really hard. Let's take a look at, so there's some definite key things that didn't go well with this demo. Let's take a look at what a more positive demo experience would be. So I'm here in my Sunshine Chocolates environment. As a sales user, this would be the first thing you see when you log in. This is your customized homepage. On the bottom left, you can see your upcoming events. Next to it, you can see any tasks that you have coming up. In the center of the page, you've got your quarterly performance chart that's automatically updated as you close deals, so you can see how you're tracking against your goals. And on the top of the page, we've got our navigation bar. This is how you get to all of the elements in your Salesforce environment, including your deals. Let's click into one of our top deals right now, our Mary's Opportunity, or our Mary's Gourmet Foods intro package. On the top of the panel, I've got my highlights panel. This gives me all of the key details about this deal that I need right when I click on it. I can see my visual indicator for where we're at in this deal. It's called Path. I can also update the deal using this tool. And as I scroll down, I can see all of the history of activities that I've had with this customer, including any upcoming tasks, historical events, emails, notes, so I know every single time we have worked with this customer on this deal. So those were relatively different demos. There's a few key things I'd like to show you or talk about that were especially different. One was the sizing. So definitely be considerate of your audience and your real estate when you're doing a demo. So going to full screen in Chrome, or also often going into 110%, really making the most of your real estate. In this Chrome browser, I also had a bunch of extensions up. I obviously had my grumpy cat Chrome set up here on my Chrome homepage. I also had a very annoying mouse. I haven't actually seen anyone do a demo with a pizza Ninja Turtle mouse. However, I have seen people do demos with kind of obnoxious custom mouses before. So really being considerate of what's on the screen. And I didn't have any data on it, right? I didn't have data on the opportunity. I didn't have data on the homepage. So there wasn't opportunities for my audience to understand what I would be doing with that page and use that as a coaching opportunity. And this wasn't customized at all. It was kind of boring. It was just my boring developer environment org. So as you're building your demos, thinking about how are you staying really focused with your demo. How are you cleaning up the experience for your users or for your audience with that demo? And we've got some key best practices. Never demo in production. Even if it's an internal demo, just don't do it. It is just better to stay away from it. Definitely don't ever demo in production if it's an external demo. I recommend demoing if it's internal, potentially in a sandbox. And then if it's external, or in general, a DE is always a great place to demo. You can always customize it. And even if you are demoing in a sandbox, I recommend adjusting or boofing any of the data. Any data that's sensitive can obviously be something you don't want to share, even internally. But it can also be distracting, right? Like you don't want a meeting where you're talking about a new flow that you built to get derailed because you're showing like live data about sales metrics and then it turns into a conversation about that. So really being thoughtful about the data you're showing. Preloading everything that you can. So in my good demo example, I had a preloaded URL here. And this is kind of the magic URL. And I only recommend doing this if it's a demo environment. Don't never do that for production. But it's really difficult to type in your password if you're in front of people or projecting. There's like this rule that if you're projecting, it becomes impossible to type your password. So always like save your password for your demo environment in that Chrome browser or do a bookmark link. Also, save any existing file paths and things like that. Those are great ways to just decrease the likelihood that there'll be snafus or mistypes. And if you are going to type a lot, like say you're showing some examples of chatter or you have a particular formula you want to demo and it's like a big presentation, like maybe a session, there's a great tool called Keyboard Maestro. We actually use it for many of our keynotes to preload strings of text, and then you can do hotkeys to enter those in. So here's our little pre-flight checklist before you do any demo. Always restart your computer. Rebecca knows I'm always telling everyone on our team, restart your computer all the time. I restart my computer every day, but definitely before you're presenting, always restart your computer. Make sure you're checking for any possible like updates, things like that. It'll also just help it run cleaner. Turn off all of your notifications on your machine and turn on Do Not Disturb. Also quit all non-essential apps. So any app that is not directly related to your demo, quit. Quit out of Messenger, quit out of any other Chrome windows, quit out of any backup software you have running. Not only will it make the performance better if you are like on a webinar, for example, but also it just decreases the likelihood you're going to accidentally click into the wrong thing. Clean up your desktop. So I usually keep in my documents folder a clean your room folder, and you can just select everything on your desktop, drop it in there, but make sure there's nothing on your desktop that's distracting. And also setting up your browser. So I like to use Chrome People to set up different demo users, and that's how you can save your username and your password. So I love to set up Chrome People for all of my various demo users, and then you can just open that up and you don't have to like keep quitting out of bookmark bars and extensions for your different Chrome browsers. So that is how you can rock your next demo with the right framework, awesome slides, and a focused demo. And the most important thing to remember about all of this is that practice makes perfect. So we always lose our skills if we don't use them. So it's a great time to start practicing doing technical demos and finding those times to demo. So maybe you have an upcoming demo scheduled or upcoming presentation scheduled, but also there might be chances to present to your company, for example, that you haven't done in the past. So like we are in the middle of the Winter 20 release right now. That's a great chance to share maybe some cool Winter 20 tools or features with your end users and kind of challenge yourself to do more presentations and to hone those skills. We've also put together a set of curated learning specific to delivering awesome presentations at the bit.ly RockMyPresoTrailmix. The link is on the screen. It is case sensitive, so where you see it underlined, that means it's capitaled. And make sure to let us know about your awesome prezos with hashtag RockMyPreso on Twitter.
And with that, thank you so much for joining us for this webinar, Rock My Preso.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.